Let me start with my presentation. We're going to talk about robots, in particular socially assistive robots, and how they can help us age and improve our well-being. I'm just going to share my screen. Feel free to jump in anytime if you have any questions, but I'll wait till the end for the discussion as well. Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen. So thank you, Giannis, for that kind introduction. Just to give you an overview of what my research encompasses, our team is really focused on developing robots for society. So we're looking at developing intelligent robots that are assistive. They could be in service applications as well, and in general to help people. We try to design our robots to be emotionally intelligent. They're also persuasive. They can adapt to users' needs and wants in order to improve engagement and long-term interactions. They can also work in numerous types of environments. So you can see from here, cluttered environments, rugged environments, as well as, structured environments where we're used to, indoor and outdoor environments as well. They do cooperate with each other. So we design multi-robot teams as well as with humans. We think that's really important to have them work alongside of us. Just to give you an overview of what we've been doing for the past few decades, in terms of robots, for unknown and cluttered environments, we're looking at deploying robots in scenes that they've never seen before. And these can be different types of structures. For example, a robot is learning how to climb a pipe for the first time, go around obstacles in a structured environment, learn how to climb hills and steep terrain. And all this to help support different applications. For example, search and rescue could be a good application of these types of robots, whether it's in urban environments, after rubble, over rubble. So if you have an earthquake and there's rubble everywhere, the robots can help find survivors and victims. Other types of applications we're looking at is bringing teams together. And now, again, dealing with unknown environments. So if you need a robot to, or a team of robots to find targets of interest in a home environment, for example, you can deploy these robots. Again, in outdoor environments, you can deploy the robots to predict the map of the environment that they're traveling in. So this is an outdoor environment scenario, for example. You're thinking of kind of a wilderness or a park or something that has a lot of trees and shrubs. And then this is an indoor environment where robots are working together to find different targets. Those targets could be static targets, an object, or they could actually be people of interest. And of course, we're dealing with people. So we're looking at physical human-robot interaction, cooperation, if you will. The idea of handover. How does a robot provide an object to a person? How can that be done in a natural manner? As well as robots search of people in different areas. And of course, as people, we're dynamic. We have schedules, different times of the day. We have to be in different places. So how can a robot find us? And how can it approach us that it's comfortable for us, right? That's important as well. And identify us at the same time. So for example, the Blueberry robot is looking in a research lab for a target person. It identifies new people that it hasn't seen before, puts them in its database, and continues for the next, let's say, employment that it needs to find that person now. And also it tries to approach people in a comfortable manner. So if it finds someone, it'll adjust its direction in order to approach them more frontal, right, than back from the back, which would be uncomfortable. We also look at cluttered environments where, for example, a grocery store has lots of shelves with products on them. And then you have people in the grocery store as well, and they're shopping and they have their own goals of which products they need to buy. So how does a robot navigate this to achieve its own goals? Maybe it's going to the same aisle as other people. How does it deal with social awareness? So these are important factors when we want to deploy robots in real world environments that we live in. And of course, interaction the sense of social interaction is really important. So how does a robot provide assistance for people in everyday life? If you're thinking about activities of daily living, different types of interventions, gaming, exercise, anything that you do throughout the day. How can a robot assist with that? So for example, here, the Leia robot is providing clothing recommendations. The Tangi robot is facilitating a trivia game with groups of people playing trivia. We target a lot of older adults that are aging to help them stay in their home longer, to promote independence, and of course, aging in place, which we all want to do as we age. So how can we have the robots provide stimulation doing this? And of course, exercise is an important activity that keeps us healthy. So how do we have a robot facilitate exercise? And I'll talk about some of these in more detail, but just to give you an idea of the different types of interactions our robots are engaged in. And in general, we want to really improve a person's cognitive, affective, and social functioning. This all leads to improved quality of life. So our robots can engage in those activities of daily living I was mentioning, in cognitive leisure activities. They can provide social interaction and just companionship by being beside a person and communicating with them, whether it's, recalling memories, having a discussion about, what they did that day. So anything to promote interactions, and of course, safeguarding and providing reminders. So this translates to some of the different activities we've been doing. And we've been doing this for about 20 years. So we've had a few different types of activities and deployments of robots with older adults to see what the outcomes will be. And I'll show you some of our studies in a few slides. We've done robots that can help people prepare meals, as well at the same time if they're eating their meal, to prompt them through the steps of eating. So if you're thinking of people living with cognitive impairment or dementia, they may forget a step or get easily distracted. So the robot is there to tell them what the next step is, re-engage them if needed, and it's a social activity. So the robot tells jokes, asks them about their day, tells them about the food. So there's engagement on that part as well. And then as I mentioned, clothing recommendation, as well as then once the robot has recommended clothing, for example, if you have a special event that you want to go to, the robot considers the event, the weather, your personal preferences for your favorite outfits, and recommends an outfit based on that, and then how to put it on. Of course, exercise and dance therapy, which I'll talk about as well. And we've looked at one-on-one interactions as well as group interactions. As you know, group dynamics really play into a person's engagement in an activity. So how does a robot facilitate that versus if you're just interacting with the robot one-on-one? And some of the other types of activities, we've done reminders a lot about self-hygiene, medication, appointments, and then all these stimulating recreation activities that I'll talk a little bit about each one of them as well. So the first activity we started off with was meal eating. The real reason between this, or the motivation for designing a robot to assist with meal eating, is we went to a lot of long-term care homes or nursing homes, and we observed what was going on during the day. And meal times were really interesting for us because, there's set times. 8 a.m. is breakfast, 12 p.m. is lunch, and then 5 p.m. is dinner. Everyone goes into the dining hall and they all sit there and their meals are prepared and brought to them. And there's different types, of abilities. Some people can eat their meal on their own just fine. Some people need physical assistance, so they need help with feeding. And then there's the group in between that may get distracted or just need social motivation or prompting to be able to eat their meal. So we targeted that middle group here, where the robot could provide social prompting to the individuals. And of course, since meal eating is a social event, they're doing it at tables full of other people. We do it ourselves when we go out with friends or eat with family. So the idea was that the robot would be engaging in terms of providing other information, not just prompting to eat the meal.
Hi.
So this is our Brian robot,
just
to give you an
Brian.
idea.
Hi, Brian.
You look very nice today. Please join me for lunch. Today's menu includes some pasta, apple slices, and water.
So
Hi.
the robot introduces itself, provides the menu for the day, and then engages the person in the meal eating interaction. Now, what we wanted to do, this was obviously done, a few decades ago, but the idea was, could we have a robot engage a person into the meal eating activity? And we had a group of older adults come and have a meal with a robot within a span of a week. We actually had them come twice during that week time and eat with Brian. And the idea was, would they be engaged? Would they comply when the robot asked them to pick up their fork and bring the food to their mouth? What was the interaction like? So in terms of engagement, we had about 8 participants that they came and joined Brian for a lunch. And we found in terms of interaction time, they varied very vastly. So we had some people that took 10 minutes to eat, but we had others that took up to an hour roughly to eat. That tells us something about not just their capabilities of eating, but also, how much time they like to spend and how much time they like to spend with the robot. We monitored the visual focus of attention towards the robot as well as the utensils that were used to eat the meal. So we had a meal tray, and what we did was we had embedded sensors under the tray. So there was a main dish, there was a side dish, and a beverage. And we were measuring the content or how much food was left in those dishes and even in the beverage to let us know if the person was eating those. And what we found, and then we had a utensil that we were tracking. We had IR LEDs on the utensil, and then we had just an IR sensor on the robot, tracking the motion of people bringing the utensil to their mouth, or it's still on the tray. So we found in general 98% engagement in terms of visual focus of attention. So they were really engaged in the activity. The time they spent with manipulating the meal items, the utensils mainly, versus the robot was interesting. So you can see it varies. Some people were spending more time with the robot versus the meal. So 42% here, 43% here. And then a lot of people were taking, more time eating, 84%, 71%. So on average, 69% of the time was spent manipulating the meal items. We wanted to see, well, did they say anything to the robot, or did just listen to the robot and comply with its prompts and just eat their meal? And you can see the person that stayed the longest with the interaction with the robot actually had 86 utterances back to the robot. These were things like, oh, I really enjoy eating this meal. Brian, are you going to eat as well? I enjoy spending time with you. So just common phrases that they were saying to the robot. They were talking about, oh, the meal smells delicious or tastes delicious. And we noticed 36 on average utterances towards the robot. So this was the first time they were engaging in a robot, first time interaction with a robot. We made sure that our robot is socially interactive, so it was natural communication back and forth. There was no learning needed to be done before they came to the study. And then, of course, we measured their compliance. So we saw that in general, they had an 87% compliant actions towards when the robot prompted them to do something. Now, again, it varies. You can see participant 2 was 67. This is important to note because that day, the main dish was scrambled eggs. And this participant didn't like scrambled eggs. So when the robot was prompting them to eat their food, they would eat the side dish. So in a way, they were still eating, but they weren't eating the main dish, which is the most nutritious for them. These are things we have to consider when we're designing robots. This is where the adaptability comes into play. So how do we know the main dish is the most nutritious. How do we get a person to eat that dish? And this is where we'll talk about persuasion and intelligence. So that really taught us, this was our first of its kind study. It taught us a lot about interaction and how people respond to robots, especially older adults that have never seen this technology before. And now they're interacting and they're engaged in activity with the robot. So this was great for our research and kind of leading the way of what we wanted to do with socially assistive robots. So then we looked at, okay, can we get our robot to learn the prompting behaviors? And who to teach our robots to do this? Well, as engineers, we can pre-program the robots to do this, incorporate all the learning algorithms we want to do, but we don't necessarily know the nuances that happens in different homes or different long-term care homes. So we want the caregivers to be able to teach the robots how to prompt or how to go through the steps of an activity. Wouldn't that be great? So what we did was we had our Casper robot, which is shown here, and I'll show you some videos of it. Here's Casper. We had students from our university in allied healthcare programs. So this is nursing, speech pathology, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, demonstrate to the robot how to assist an older adult with dementia to prepare a cup of tea in a kitchen. And they did this under different scenarios. They went through all the different steps. And then we used a combination of learning from demonstration and reinforcement learning for the robot to learn how to personalize these behaviors. We incorporate different users' levels of cognition. So from, it could be normal functioning to mild cognitive impairment, so that the robot is aware of that in terms of how many prompts it needs to provide, the details of the prompts, and how much repetition it needs to have. This video gives you an idea of what the scenario looked like for the robot to learn these steps.
Miss Potts, would you like to make some tea?
All right. Miss Potts, would you like to make some tea?
So we use IBM Watson for the speech or the visual, the language processing, natural language processing. And so it would learn that. It would actually also detect pose of the person. So if the person's arms are moving, the robot's arms would move up as well. And that was to mimic the person's gestures as well. So between speech and gestures, the robot was able to learn how to assist a person to actually be able to provide assistance. Then we decided to deploy Casper in a retirement home setting to see how well it learned its behaviors and how effective those behaviors are. In addition to that, we thought, well, let's look at different technologies. We have our robot Casper, which has a face. It has LEDs you can see for the mouth and the eyebrows. It can provide facial expressions using those LEDs, as well as it has two arms that provide gestures. It has a tablet on its torso that it can show videos for that activity. So when you're going through the different steps of the activity, it can provide you visual information as well of how to do that activity. And of course, it has speech, but as well as vocal intonation that matches its facial expression. We compared that. So we call this a dynamic, and it has dynamic and social features. We compared this to another robot, which is more character-like robot. It doesn't have any arms. It has a virtual face on a screen, and it has maybe a few emojis that it can display. And of course, the simplest of these types of technologies to use is a tablet on a tabletop tablet. The tablet would show the videos as well, use the same speech or text to prompt the person through the steps of the activity. Ed would do the same thing, the character-like robot. So the content was the same. It was just the way that it was presented through our socially embodied robot, our character-like robot, or the tablet. So let me just show you a quick video of the interaction with Casper, and then I'll discuss the results of our study. So we had people interact with all three platforms.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
My name is Casper. It is a pleasure to meet you.
You too.
I am a personal assistant for your
You
home.
can see the mouth is moving as the robot's speaking.
Try pulling the silver lever towards you.
So now this is prompting through the steps of making tea. You need to fill the kettle first, to turn on the water. And you can see how
Try filling the kettle under the water.
robot, so engagement is important here. And in the first part of the video you saw, when the robot waved, the person was actually waving back. So there was mimicry as well involved. Now we wanted to see, okay, so is there a need to have a socially assistive robot like this? Do we need a robot that's embodied with arms, with a face, with facial expressions, with vocal intonation, and so on? And we found that in general, Casper promoted higher levels of engagement, as well as positive affect, which I'll talk about a little bit more, perceived social intelligence when it was compared to the Ed robot here and our tablet that we were using. So here are the different facial expressions of Casper. So we had 5 different facial expressions. I'll include that in there, but really, at a neutral face, a surprised face, a sad face, and a happy face. Ed only had 2 emojis. And of course, the tablet didn't have any facial expressions. what was really interesting was when we asked the individuals how they felt about Casper, would they take it into their home? Where would they put it in their home? They actually viewed Casper similar to a person. They thought they could have put it in a social or private area of their home and use it as a companion versus Ed and the tablet, where they viewed those more as tools. So they were going to store it more in the closet, take it out when they needed it, or store it away for when people came over, they wouldn't see it, versus Casper, which they were comfortable with having it everywhere they were. Between the character-like robot Ed and the tablet, we noticed that Ed had better acceptance than the tablet because it was also interactive in some sense. So this really motivated the idea of using socially assistive robots and the idea of robots being embodied, which is really important in socially assistive robotics research. Knowing this, those were one-on-one interactions. We thought, okay, what about group settings? Is there any different influence with groups of people? How can robots facilitate activities with groups? So we actually had our Tangi robot provide different studies where we had the robot facilitate bingo games with older adults and then trivia. And the idea is that bingo is actually a very stimulating activity that's played a lot in long-term care facilities. The idea is, bingo, you can have recall, memory, recognition. You have to remember motor skills because we actually had bingo markers that had to be placed physically on the bingo card. And as well, it promotes social interaction with other players. The main concept is you have, 4 or 5 players playing with their own cards, but they're sitting beside each other. So there could be interaction that facilitated by the robot, where they're speaking about the robot or they're speaking about the game and how they're playing. So again, we didn't want to design the robots and have the behaviors we wanted the robots to have. We wanted the caregivers and care providers to be involved. So we had them teach Tangi how to facilitate a game of bingo. And this video shows you how does a robot actually learn to wave? It seems like a very simple gesture, but you have to teach it somehow.
Gesture recording has started.
And
please move slowly so I can follow the movements.
How to wave. So it's trying to follow the movements of the person. We had a GUI set up as an interface. They could type in what they wanted the robot to say, or they could actually just say it verbally, whichever they preferred, and the robot would repeat that. And if they liked it, they would move on.
Hello, everyone. Who feels lucky today? Does everyone have a card?
Of how to do that. They had to teach the robot.
The next number is I-20.
You can kind of put all this together. The robot would point to its screen because the number could show up on its screen as well as it's saying what the number is. So all this incorporate together. Now, if someone needs help, the robot has to approach them. So they were teaching how to find the person that needs help and the robot to go to that person, provide that assistance. So you can see Tangi is starting to move towards the bingo card. So all this had to be taught. Again, using learning from demonstration to help. Once the robot learned all this, we did a user study with 7 participants. Older participants, they had 4 one-hour sessions of bingo with Tangi, and in this case, each participant participated in at least 2 bingo sessions. And there was about 3 or 4 bingo games in each session. This is all being learned by non-expert users. So gives the ability for caregivers to come in and personalize the game for their facility or their home. So here's Tangi learning how to wave, and now it's implemented the wave.
I am so excited to play bingo with you today.
So it calls out the
It is
number,
one of my favorite games.
adds an introductory greeting.
Let's play bingo.
They also could customize the background music that the robot was playing during the activity.
Oh, 69.
So As you recall, the robot learned how to point. So here it
Oh,
is pointing to the
69.
screen for the number. I'm just gonna go a little bit forward. And then it needs to confirm that, actually, let me do the joke.
How about
So
a
it also
joke?
taught a joke.
Where do snowmen keep their money?
You know the answer?
In snowbanks.
No bank. Yeah, so it also, because again, it's stimulating activity, right? So
Congratulations, you have won
the
bingo.
person has one bingo.
Big work, that's
Plays a celebration song, does a little dance. So all this incorporated to promote engagement with the robot, engagement in the activity, because we know it has great benefits. We also did trivia. The main difference between trivia and bingo is that each individual was playing separately in bingo, but in trivia, they're playing in groups, and in particular, groups of 2. Again, trivia has many benefits. It improves working memory. You have to remember a lot of information about different topics. Also, it promotes social interaction between the players since they're playing in groups. So examples of, types of questions, the robot would present some categories and then ask the people what the response or the answer is. And the nice thing was that they would actually interact with each other. There was turn taking. So when one player would say, oh, okay, I answered the previous question, you answered this question. And there was a lot of social interaction happening between the players. And they would also speak to the robot as well. So we wanted to compare the 2 scenarios, individuals playing on their own, but sitting beside each other, like bingo, and individuals playing together in teams. And if you can see the engagement and compliance here, they're both pretty high. We had questionnaires asking, their overall experience in terms of enjoyment, game interest, and intent to use Tangi to play these activities. And there wasn't much difference between the 2 activities. The only thing we noticed was there was more social interactions during trivia. And we measured this by how much they spoke to each other and the number of utterances between each other. And this kind of makes sense, of course, because they're playing in a group setting. But we also noticed that they had more utterances towards the robot itself as well, which is interesting to see. So it's promoting social interactions with the robot, which is great. So kind of going from now the interventions that we've used or the game interventions to another activity of daily living, dressing. Here we looked at, it's very hard for a robot to recognize you putting on your clothes if you're correctly putting them on, especially little buttons or zippers. So we wanted to embed wearables. So in this case, we designed our socially assistive robot with wearables all in one system. And we use this for the dressing assistance. So the idea is we're incorporating smart clothing, which is a huge technology right now. It's low cost and comfortable, and a robot can now use the information from the smart clothing to be able to prompt a person through the dressing steps. So if they close the right button, for example, they put the shirt on correctly. And this promotes dressing independence. It's very important for older adults, especially if you're dealing with 4 seasons in the winter time. If someone doesn't dress appropriately, doesn't wear, for example, a winter hat or winter gloves, there's obviously dangers there if they go outside. So we want to promote dressing well and being able to dress yourself. And the robot learns the preferences of the person through interactions with them over and over again. So you can see here is the wearable. It has strain gauges, so it's measuring the movements of the person's body as they put on the clothes. So I'm just going to show you a quick video of what that looks. And you can entail this for a lot of things and a lot of different activities as well. So here are the strain sensors.
Hello, my name is Leia. I am an intelligent, socially assistive robot designed to assist people, including older adults, with activities of daily living, including getting dressed.
Okay, so Leah can provide you with assistance now.
There are social interactions using reinforcement learning.
So it's using a
Let me
combination
show you what I can
of
do.
reinforcement learning with the information from a camera as well as the strain gauges. This is using emotional behavior to prompt a person.
Nice dress shirt. I am excited to help you put it on for today's dinner. Yay! Time to get started. Please put your left arm through the armhole of the dress shirt.
And now it's going through the different prompting stages.
It would make me happy if you put your right arm through your dress shirt. I am enjoying this. Just one step left. Please fasten the buttons on your dress shirt.
This is the last step to fasten the buttons. This is detecting if you're doing it correctly, if you missed a button or you fastened the wrong button into the hole.
You are all done putting on your dress shirt. Looking good. Enjoy the dinner today.
So the emotional behavior is important, and there's different ways you can do this. The behavior doesn't have to necessarily be emotional. And I'll discuss, there's a lot of different avenues you can take. You can take a logical approach. There's other ways of doing this, but the idea is the emotions are what engages the person in the interaction. And we found that with a lot of studies with older adults and seeing how they respond to the robot. During COVID, or just before COVID, we were actually doing a long-term study on exercise. And this is one-on-one exercise versus group sessions. So the idea was, could we determine how the robot should prompt a user or groups of users by using their feedback, their emotional feedback, or their affect? So we had an EEG headband that the person wore, and we also had a heart rate wristband just to monitor their heart rate as they were doing the exercise. So if their heart rate was peaking, then we'd ask them to take a rest, for example. The EEG headband was used to measure valence, their really enjoyment in the activity, and that would help design or determine what the robot's behaviors should be. So I just want to show you a quick video. Now, we chose a long-term care facility that primarily didn't speak English. And I think that's really important as we're developing robotic technology, that, you have in different countries that speak different languages, as well as even within one country. Living in Toronto, we have a lot of different dialects of different languages available. It's very diverse. And the older adults living in our long-term care homes are not necessarily native English speakers or native French speakers. So we have to accommodate them. So in this case, the robot spoke both Cantonese and Mandarin. So you can see, here's the robot. We changed its eye color, so if you're familiar with the Pepper robot, you have the LEDs around its eyes. So we use, for example, green for the robot being happy, blue for sad. So here you can see the EEG headband and the wristband for users. We had a physiotherapist teach the robot which exercise it should implement. And so these are upper limb exercises, so hand movements, head movements, and so on. And then how many repetitions to have. So as you interacted with the robot, the repetitions would get harder and more as you go along. So here you can see the users are in the robot. Some individuals could move only one arm, others 2 arms, and so on. That's the group setting. I'll just show you what the one-on-one setting look like. Just gonna fast forward through it. Here's what the one-on-one setting looks like. So you can see the direct line, visual line, right, between the user, whereas in the group setting, in a semicircle with the robot. So we wanted to see, okay, 2 things: engagement, as I was mentioning, but also because we're measuring valence, how do they feel during the interaction? We saw that the majority of the users had positive valence. It didn't matter if they were in a group setting or individual settings. The interesting thing is, because this was a 2-month study, we noticed that there was more than half of the participants thought their physical health was actually being improved and they were motivated to do the daily exercise session with the robot versus if there was no robot there. So they were excited to have the robot there. What we noticed was their range of motion was actually improving. So they were lifting their arms higher, they were opening their arms wider. This is really important because the robot could do this repetition number of times with individuals. It was going into the long-term care home weekly. There was at least 2 sessions with the same person and repeated sessions. So this was great to see that the robot had some physical improvements as well on the person's overall activity. The only difference between the one-on-one session and the group sessions was the individuals in the one-on-one session perceived the robot to be more sociable and intelligent. And they had higher ratings for the robot's physical appearance, as well as its movements. And we think this is because of the location, right? So if you have a direct line of sight to the robot versus if you're in a semicircle, you may be offside, you may not see everything as clearly. And this could be why the participants in the one-on-one session perceived it to be more sociable and intelligent. During COVID, as everyone in the world had lockdowns, we were experiencing lockdowns in our long-term care homes where nobody was allowed to go inside. So that meant instructors that came in to do these sessions, whether it was recreational, they were locked out. So they weren't, the users inside, the residents living there weren't getting these, like for example, dance therapy sessions. Family members, of course, weren't going in either. So we had our robot go in. And actually, we had 2 different types of robots go in and do dance therapy, facilitate autonomous dance therapy with the individuals. The nice thing about robots is they can easily be wiped down and cleaned and be used in such settings when it's pandemic. So we did a two-month long-term study here as well. I just want to show you, we're still kind of in the process of looking at what the data is giving us.
How are you doing today? My name is Chili.
Robot.
I am a socially assistive robot from the
that provided dance therapy, and we incorporate different dance movements. We had the robot learn how to dance based on its also affective properties, so its emotions, and that we use the user groups as input. So we're detecting the emotions of the user groups based on their body language as they're moving. And the robot now matches its emotions based on that. Just give you an idea of movements. So here is Chili dancing. We had some primitive actions, and the robot would choose which primitive actions to play versus, based on the pitch of the song and the speed of the song. And then of course we had, so you can kind of see it moving. And then
How are you doing today? My name is Han Solon. Would you like to dance with me?
We're comparing different embodiments in this study, as well as we compared in person, where the robot was physically there in the home, and remote, where the robot was in our lab, but facilitating dance sessions to see if there's any differences. And currently the data is showing us that there isn't much difference between the in-person and the remote, which opens up a great avenue for us and researchers in robotics, because now you can have a robot remotely facilitate any session that you want, any activity that you want, and the users will still have the same benefits. So, and then also the people who don't have the, maybe the resources to have the robot physically there, we can now do it across distances as well. So based on our preliminary results of the pilot study, we found that both the staff and residents had positive attitudes towards the robot and the idea of group dance. They found it useful in supporting recreational activities. And they also had positive ratings for perceived ease of use and perceived enjoyment. So again, enjoyment, engagement, and ease of use have been high in all our studies because we're using the social capabilities of the robot, the natural communication, nonverbal and verbal. I just want to spend a few minutes talking about persuasion, and then I'll open it up to questions. So I was mentioning behaviors. How do you get a robot? How do you design a robot's behaviors? So you can use a lot of different things like emotional or logic. So in this case, we're thinking of a motion robot and a logical robot.
My computer vision system can detect 500 jelly beans in the jar.
So that's a logical strategy.
It would make me happy if you used my guess of 1,000 jelly beans in the jar.
And that's the emotional strategy. So the game we're looking at is the jelly bean guessing game. You put a number of jelly beans in the jar, and then you have to guess how many jelly beans are in the jar. It's a favorite kind of game at parties and so on. We had 118 participants in our study, and we looked at different strategies. So there was the control, which was the neutral, the logic, and the affective, to see which one would you actually respond to. So if you were given these two scenarios, which robot would you choose in terms of which guess you should say? Because the robot would tell you, like, there's 500 jelly beans in the jar. The other robot may say there's 200 jelly beans in the jar. Do you feel more comfortable accepting the affect strategy or the logical strategy? Think about your answer, and I'll tell you what we found. So we found actually that the affect strategy had significantly higher persuasive influence for individuals. We now had different age groups. We had different gender types. We had different occupations as well. So we noticed that there wasn't really any difference between the age or gender groups, but there was difference between the occupational or field of study of the individuals. In general, people that were in engineering, physical science, and business were more influenced by the robots and aligned their answers closer to their suggestions than those in the life sciences and humanities. And we always ask ourselves why. Well, in general, people working in more social occupations have shown more negative attitudes towards robots. So we found that our findings may be a correlation between the familiarity of the technology, also because of what the media is presenting about the technology, right? The losing jobs, displacement of workers, and so on. So people are maybe more hesitant to incorporate this in this technology or accept it. So we noticed that emotions are a really important aspect for strategies and behavior strategies of robots. So we went ahead and designed different behavior strategies because there's nothing that exists that gives us guidelines on which behavior strategies we should use for robots. Everyone does their own type of research. They design their own behaviors for a robot. There's no commonality or generalization. So we wanted to design a behavior strategy methodology, which could outline a set of different behaviors you could use, and then depending on the activity or the group of individuals the robot is interacting with, you could decide which ones are best fit. So this is praise with emotions, for example.
So many people have completed this activity. It is their favorite one. Let's see if it will be your favorite too.
This is commitment with emotions.
It would make me happy if you would do this activity again with me tomorrow.
So making someone commit to continuing doing the activity. And then this is compliment with anticipation.
You did great at this activity. I can't wait to see how you do next time.
And you can see this one also has an emotion as well involved in it. We had all different types of strategies implemented, in particular, I'd say 10 different strategies. And we wanted to see from a caregiver's perspective, which ones would be the most effective in having older adults participate in. It didn't matter what the type of activity was. It was an assistive type activity. So a robot assisting a person, whether it was a cognitive intervention, an activity of daily living. What we found was the three that I showed you were the best fit or had the highest ratings. So the praise with emotion, commitment with emotion, and compliment with anticipation. In terms of the robot's behavior, you saw that there was speech, there was vocal intonation, and there was body language, as well as the eye colors changed of the robot. We found that the caregivers put more emphasis on the body language and speech quality than they did with the eye color. They didn't actually think the eye color was an influencing factor. So it didn't matter if the eyes were yellow, blue, or green. It didn't influence their perception of that behavior. I'm just gonna maybe quickly go to my last slide. So what we've really seen during the pandemic is the need for socially assistive robots. In lockdowns, what's the alternative to not having people there? The idea of having remote robots to help with activities of daily living or in general to promote well-being and health has been great for us. And I think this is kind of pushing the way forward into how our research and people in this area can really encompass using robots to help people with their daily lives and promote independence and well-being. So I'll stop here. I just wanted to thank all my group members for their hard work, all the different studies they've done, of course, and our funding agencies that have supported our research, as well as the long-term care and retirement homes and hospitals that have allowed us to take our robots there and really be kind of the guinea pigs for our research. Okay, thank you very much.